Over the years here at KREM, I have worked on thousands of stories. I was actually thinking about that just the other day. It has been literally thousands of stories. Many of them have just been regular news of the day, but some have been much bigger. Some have had lasting impacts, and some have changed lives. I am so proud of the work that I was able to do here at KREM because it allowed me to tell those really important stories to you. So here are just some of the most memorable stories that I have been lucky enough to share over the last 12 years. This area of Okanagan County is remote, it is undeveloped, and it is completely cut off from technology. So when the Cold Springs fire swept through this very spot, there was no way to call for help. Jake and Jamie Highland have not been back here since that night more than a year ago. But they did let us come here to see firsthand what happened and to help tell their story.
There's no Wi-Fi out there. And that wasn't good, you know, when there's a disaster going on. But usually that's nice because it's like disconnected from the world and it's really peaceful.
It was Labor Day weekend 2020. The young Highland family had set off with their 1.5-year-old son Yuri for a quick getaway to some family property in Okanagan County.
We had just enough daylight to set up our tent.
We were sitting there and watched the stars passed out, and I look up and like I see a piece of ash and there's just like this orange hue, and like you can kind of hear the rumbling of the fire at that point. I ran back and I'm like, Jamie, we gotta go.
We had 3 different options. We could try and hide in the Quonset hut, but we thought we'll probably turn into toast in there. We could try and go back up the road, but that was really the direction the fire was coming from. The third option was to try and get to the river. So we hopped in the car with our son and zoomed as fast as we could.
I'm like sticking my head out the window trying to like see, I mean, it was terrible.
But it was dark and the ground was uneven and dangerous.
We hit a rock and it stopped us.
Like there was a slight jerk. We all recovered pretty quick.
Jacob punctured his lung and didn't realize it in
I
the
had
moment.
no clue.
The adrenaline.
They had no choice but to get out and run.
So what happens after you had to abandon the truck?
Once we got into the valley was like a dried creek bed. And like we're running through that and like, I mean, it's treacherous in the daylight with, you know, boots on. Like, I mean, let alone the middle of the night by yourself running for your life.
The wind was blowing hard that night. It's estimated the fire was moving 50 to 60 miles an hour. So when it became obvious that they would not be able to outrun the flames, they took shelter at a rock face like this one. They got as close to each other as they possibly could. They formed a little shelter around their baby and they prayed.
When it touched me, like when that moment happened, I mean, it's like time stood still, the screaming, the world's on fire.
When the fire first came, I'm looking at it, it's like right there. And it was like, I thought we were gonna make it to the river. I didn't think everything was gonna end like this. And then the flame was there and it was, you know, it hurt and everything, but it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to die now. We are all, me, my husband, our child, our other child inside. My little family is about to be in heaven. And then the flame passed away and it's like, oh, we didn't die. So we sat there for a little while and we thought, okay, we still might die. And then we talked about it and prayed for wisdom again and decided we are still going to try to get to the river. We were well past the point of exhaustion, but we kept going and going because we're like, we need to get to a hospital. We need to get help for our baby boy.
Did Yuri get burned? Or do you think it was the smoke? Or both?
It was probably the smoke that ultimately caused him to pass away. But yeah, he suffered some burns too. And I remember just Jacob's voice as he held him close and said, I'm sorry, I know it hurts, I'm sorry.
Finally, they made it to the Columbia River. But they decided their best bet was to keep going to try and find help at the Chief Joseph Dam, roughly 10 miles away.
When we got to the cove that was impassable, we were trying to find, is there any way, like, can we climb up it? But our hands were too destroyed. Could we get around it? We'd have to like swim, and like, how do we carry our son, and are we even capable of swimming right now? And then Jacob said, I think he's dead. So we went back to the shore and we looked, and there was just a little bit of breath left. He was just barely alive. So we all lay down and cuddled together and held him close and whispered a blessing and a send-off and told him that heaven is a good place and Jesus loves children, and we'll see him there sooner or later. And we all three fell asleep together. And when we woke up, he was gone. And then we lay back down to die, and we didn't die. And the first night, the wind was so bad, it was so cold. I tried to stop shivering because I was like, the more I shiver, the more it feels like I'm having contractions, and I don't want to lose another baby here.
Did you know what was happening? Did you know you were having a miscarriage?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah. The feeling was similar to the feelings of giving birth, and so I knew that couldn't be good. But I mean, I couldn't stop it, and so we lost our unborn child too.
But as much as this story is about unimaginable pain and loss, it is just as much about faith.
There was just this awareness that we're not alone. God is with us in this moment. He was with us in the fire, and we don't know what's next. But no matter what happens, He's with us. Jacob was doing everything to take care of me. Like, he had more strength than I did. Like, our hands didn't work, but I remember him like kicking the gravel over me to keep me warm.
Like, I was like, I'm gonna go get water, but I think that's the last time I can do it.
But we kept praying, okay, God, either send us a boat or a helicopter or take us to heaven, because just laying here is no good.
And then, after 2 days and 2 nights on the banks of the river, those prayers were answered.
I heard it coming. We'd been laying there, and she hadn't moved. I like was shaking her and shaking her and shaking her.
You would say to me, are you still here? And I'd say, yes, I'm still here.
The two were immediately rushed to the hospital in Brewster and then airlifted to the Harborview Burn Unit in Seattle.
But I remember they couldn't find a vein to get an IV going, so they had to drill into my leg.
And the next 28 days were a blur of surgeries, skin grafts, and deep waves of grief.
Watching the life go away from my child's eyes. It's not right.
We just miss him, and we never got to see him be a big brother, and we never will now.
Then came the news that Jamie could never again have children.
I'd wanted to be a mom for so long, and then I finally got to be with the most perfect child. I'm not just a woman hoping to be a mom someday. I am someone who has experienced motherhood and then had it taken away.
This is something way beyond like a physical pain. It's like a separation of love.
But even in the agony of their loss, the Highlands believe there is a reason they survived.
Do you still feel like there's a plan for you, even though the plan you thought you had has changed dramatically?
Yeah, it can all change what, the ideal situation of the plan A could be. But God can work out a plan B, He can work out a plan C, and we just take one day at a time and figure out what that's going to be.
Now they are moving forward with a new plan, trying for another baby through surrogacy.
If I'm here on Earth to do anything, it's to be there for the growing and the experience of life.
To be a dad?
Yeah, to be a dad.
What was the process like for the two of you to ultimately decide that you did want to go that route? Was that a hard decision?
Yes and no. On the one hand, it was kind of like a no-brainer, like this is our only option left. But on the other hand, there's moments when my emotions are like, do I even want more kids? Because they won't be him. But there's also the role of being a mother and the love of a mother, and that I can give to someone else.
That's why I hope we have kids. Cause like, I need like, I want to love again. Like, my son was everything.
He was the light of our world.
He was everything.
And just as before, their faith is leading the way.
Even after your body is destroyed and your heart is crushed and like the only thing you have left is somebody to hold your hand, you know, kind of. And like, life still goes on. Like the birds still chirp, like the sun still rises.
Just because this pain takes up my whole heart doesn't mean that there's not room for my heart to expand and grow and be filled with more things too.
We're here, okay. You get the baby, I'll grab the stuff.
There is a saying that time heals all wounds, and in many ways, it's been true for Jake and Jamie Hyland.
All right, Shiloh. You ready, baby girl? Mama love you.
Old scars are fading,
We all love you.
and new memories are filling in where once there was only pain.
I haven't been in here since your brother.
But some wounds, so deep, simply refuse to fade away.
People ask me all the time, like when they see us walking around, they're like, oh, is this your first baby? And it's like, man, I get tired of answering that question. But in some ways, it feels like she's the first, but she's not. She's not. Precious baby love.
And then the flame passed away, and it's like, oh, we didn't die. We were well past the point of exhaustion, but we kept going and going because we're like, we need to get to a hospital. We need to get help for our baby boy.
It's been more than 3 years since the Highlands' firstborn son, Yuri, was killed when the entire family was caught in the devastating Cold Springs wildfire in Okanogan County.
Watching the life go away from my child's eyes. It's not right. My son was everything.
He was the light of our world.
Jamie also lost her unborn baby, and her injuries, plus the infection that came after, were so severe doctors told her she would never again have children.
I'm not just a woman hoping to be a mom someday. I am someone who has experienced motherhood and then had it taken away.
Their grief was unimaginable.
Before, I didn't really know why we were living.
Because you were just surviving.
Yeah, just like, you know, day to day, like, why am I even, like, do I even deserve to eat? Like, why am I eating? What's the point? Like,
I would say there's two different pains. There's the pain of missing our son, and that pain is always there until heaven. But there's also the pain of being parents without a child.
And the pain continued for 2 more years as they worked to heal their injuries both outside and in, and turned to surrogacy to try and have more kids.
every time it failed, it was just like my cup that was already really, really empty just felt like it had even more holes in it.
So we were thrust into a grieving process yet again, and then we had a little miracle.
Habu. Habu.
A miracle named Shiloh.
So we implanted her on Yuri's birthday.
Yeah. When she was born, she went onto my chest and latched on and started nursing, and I called Jacob, and I was like, she's here.
And while it thrust the young parents back into the juggling act of a new baby,
Whoa, wiggly, wiggly girl.
Jacob says it was a welcome change.
It's just, there's something about a child's laughter that just is healing.
And even though Yuri has passed on, they both agree he's never really gone.
Dada and a Baba boy.
There's like a continuity. When somebody's life ends, it doesn't actually end. You know, they live on in memories and our thoughts. And that doesn't change. It just kind of makes you got to grow around it.
So the Hyland family is growing together,
Yeah, I think I got this.
never forgetting those old memories
I think about it probably every day. but I don't think about it all day. I don't want to be in here.
But making room for the healing power of new life.
She the baby all covered in kisses.
Yeah, you want the bag?
We're trying to make sure that the water is safe.
1 case per 2 people per household.
I am a little frustrated with the Air Force Base.
We're starting to wonder what we got ourselves into.
I don't know what's going on, who's going to pay for the flush of the water.
It's sad to say, but I really don't trust it.
Justin and Taylor Deal never used to think twice about drinking the tap water in their Airway Heights home. Until
an alert for people living and working in Airway Heights tonight.
Airway Heights announced their water could be unsafe to drink.
And we'll let you know when the water is safe to drink again.
So we immediately cut off all water in our household. I didn't shower in it, our dogs didn't get it, I didn't drink it.
the water they'd trusted for the last 4.5 years was no longer safe. Widespread contamination believed to be coming from Fairchild Air Force Base. The problem, a little-known chemical called PFAS-PFOA, two different but similar compounds used in firefighting foam, a special fire suppressant made to work on jet fuel.
Any sort of chemical goes into the ground, it's going to go into our water.
It's been used at hundreds of military bases across the country for decades, dating back at Fairchild to the 1970s.
It's scary.
And even more scary because Taylor is drinking for two.
She found out she was pregnant and they say drink tons of water.
How much do you worry about the 4.5 years that you lived here drinking that water all the time, not knowing?
It's terrifying for me. I mean, I was early on in my pregnancy, so it was really scary for me just because that's such a crucial time for organ development.
The health risks from long-term exposure to PFAS-PFOA are significant. Low birth weight and developmental delays in children. In adults, high blood pressure, thyroid and immune system deficiencies, even kidney and testicular cancer.
Yes, it's scary for me because what's going to happen down the line for me later on, but for now, a newborn child that I'm bringing into the world, I just put her in risk's way.
Fairchild officials tell me they began testing for PFAS-PFOA about 6 months ago. The EPA had just issued its official drinking water health advisory, limiting concentrations of the chemical at 70 parts per trillion. That then sparked the Air Force to start testing the groundwater around each of its bases. Testing at Fairchild began just this last April. And by May, the results were in. Some wells bordering the base contained at least 15 times more contamination than the EPA considered safe. It's believed that contamination started here at this old former fire training site on Fairchild. This is what's called the old burn pit. It's no longer being used and it hasn't been used for years. But now there are still a lot of questions about the contamination and what happens next. So to get answers, I came straight to the top.
I think most of it is the unknown right now. You make our Air Force proud.
Colonel Ryan Samuelson has been the Fairchild base commander since July of 2016.
We have volunteers from outside of the city.
For the last 6 months, he says one of his top priorities has been reassuring the Airway Heights community.
The Air Force is going to be in this. We're going to stick with these residents until we determine exactly what contamination, if any, from our activities occurred and how we're going to mitigate that.
He tells me the Air Force acted quickly once the contamination was confirmed.
When did the Air Force know about the problems that were the result of this firefighting foam?
In May of 2016, when the EPA established 70 parts per trillion, that really established the threshold in the process by which we would move forward to investigate sources. And so we tested our own internal wells, and those areas down by our firefighting were high.
He's talking about that old burn pit where Fairchild conducted regular training exercises with the firefighting foam known in the military as AFFF.
So we used to go out here and set fire to some things to allow our firefighters to train and to practice, and they would use that actual foam.
That training ground sits just over the Grand Ronde Basalt, a massive but shallow aquifer just 200 feet below the surface. It's now believed the repeated exposure from AFFF has been leaching dangerous chemicals into the groundwater for decades.
Do you feel like the Air Force did enough soon enough for all these innocent people?
I think the Air Force has done a pretty good job of identifying this as a risk. If you think about it, May of 16 established the 70 parts per trillion, and in less than a year we moved out with how we were going to mitigate.
But actually, the side effects of PFAS-PFOA are nothing new. In the year 2000, mega conglomerate 3M agreed to voluntarily phase out the chemical from its products after the EPA said it was likely carcinogenic, with a strong tendency to accumulate and pose a risk to human health and the environment. At the same time, the company made AFFF for the entire U.S. military, but also used those chemicals in Teflon and Scotchgard. Their agreement was to reduce the chemical content by 2010 and eliminate it by 2015. The military used the foam up until the very end. I also found internal records from the Department of Defense showing high-ranking officials knew about the adverse health effects of AFFF as early as 2001. Then Assistant Deputy Undersecretary of Defense Curtis Bowling issued this memo to multiple agencies saying the EPA found PFAS chemicals to be persistent, bioaccumulating, and toxic. He called for a meeting to discuss high-risk uses of PFAS and ideas on what should be done to reduce or eliminate its release into the environment. But again, the military continued to use the foam until it was no longer available. And in the last several years, PFAS-PFOA contamination has been identified at dozens of military bases across the U.S., impacting millions of people.
And so what about problems that the Air Force had heard about in other locations? We know that these same chemicals were causing problems in groundwater up in Alaska, for example, before 2016. So why still use the foam?
The foam began being pulled out of the firefighting equipment about 2 years ago. And of course, with aviation firefighting foam, it's very particular. So you had to have another source because it smothers fires with jet fuel very, very quickly and rapidly. And so until that replacement foam could come online, many areas continued to use it.
For people who live here and have lived here for many years, who are saying, we've been drinking this water now for decades. It's too late now because they've already had the contamination. So what do you say to those families?
Well, I'm not a health expert, I'll be honest with you. I know the Air Force, we look to the Center for Disease Control. We look to the EPA to establish those. We've encouraged folks to visit our website. It's got a number of links on there with very specific health-related questions that experts in that category can answer.
Commander Samuelson tells me Fairchild, like most other bases, didn't quit using AFFF until 2015, when the EPA declared 70 parts per trillion as the safe limit for drinking water.
If the Air Force knew that it was causing problems at certain bases around the country, why wait for the EPA before making some changes? Why not make the changes and stop using the foam earlier?
Well, I think there's two parts. One, I think it would be very tough to find an exact date that said, all right, no longer use this. I do know that one of the things that that took a little bit longer was, what is the alternative? You can't use water, you can't use your standard firefighting foam on aviation accidents. It would be too detrimental to the public if an aircraft were to go down.
If your family had lived here for decades, would you be satisfied with these answers?
I'll tell you, if my family had lived here, I would be asking the same questions that you're asking me right now.
Commander Samuelson tells me he's never shied away from tough questions or criticism from the Airway Heights community.
Our goal from the onset of this...
In fact, he was often the one answering questions at Airway Heights public meetings at the height of the city's water crisis.
You yourself out there answering questions. Why was that important to you?
It's important to me because this base wouldn't be here without this community. 75 years ago, this community put this base here, and I think it's important. I'm not going to turn this over to a bureaucratic organization. I'm not going to give you a Washington, D.C. number to call. I believe I represent the base here, and I think these community members have the right to know. I don't have all the answers, but we'll take any questions at our public affairs number. What are those kind of things that I can take back to the bigger Air Force as we move through this process? Because I think we need to solve this as fast as we can in a way that is very transparent with the community.
But transparency is exactly what families like the Deals say has been missing from the very beginning.
It's not his fault, but it's his responsibility. He is the base commander.
Do you question who knew what and when they knew it?
All the time. I think that they have known about it a lot longer than they are putting out, but they just didn't put the time or effort into actually testing just how bad it was.
But the Deals tell me they're not sticking around to see what the base offers up as a solution.
An apology goes only so far as my health.
What about your investment? You're home. Do you want to stay here?
No, we're leaving.
You are?
I don't know, we'll leave Airway Heights.
Where will you go?
Probably,
up north.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I like the community up there. I know that the water is safe. So this is the nursery.
Because with a baby on the way, the Deals can't help but wonder if the water near the base can ever truly be safe. And they agree it's just not worth the risk. In Airway Heights, Whitney Ward, KREM 2 News.
The airbase here at Manas has been up and running for 12 years now, but that's all going to change here over the next 6 months. And once again, our Fairchild airmen and women will play a pivotal role.
It takes a lot of work to keep a base of thousands of U.S. troops running around the clock. Mid-air refueling missions are a huge part of the Fairchild contribution, but it also takes an immense ground crew to keep the operations running smoothly. Fairchild maintainers from the 92nd Logistics and Readiness Squadron are the ones who keep the fleet in tip-top shape. They're the mechanics who painstakingly oversee every last nut, bolt, and tool to keep the aircraft at Manas flight ready.
It's just nice knowing that they have us looking over them for protection.
And they'll keep at it until the final jet leaves the runway.
We have an actual purpose when we're out here. Everybody knows what we're doing out here. We're out here just to save lives, pass gas and save lives.
Back in the shop, they too know they're part of a greater mission.
Everything that I do, I see those planes take off, they fly down south and do their mission.
And to help fuel all those aircraft, the Logistics and Readiness Squadron keeps things running.
It's opened my eyes to a lot that I didn't realize was going on.
Like what?
Just how much we really do.
Every day we're receiving fuel to issue to the aircraft that transit through. We issue to the KC-135 air-to-air refuelers, and that's a big job.
On the other side of the base, the Civil Engineer Squadron is in charge of infrastructure. They helped create the transit center from the ground up, and they'll be the ones to help take it down when the time comes.
We're focusing on the things at hand, the tasks at hand. Different tasks each day.
It's all part of the systematic drawdown of troops coming in and out of Manas. The base will completely vacate July 11th after the Kyrgyz government voted overwhelmingly to end its military partnership with the U.S.
We do respect them as our partners, especially over the course of the last 12 years and their aid to us in helping in the war on terror. And so we will honor their request and we will depart.
But one thing is crystal clear already. While Kyrgyz officials may want American troops out, the shutdown will have a grave and lasting impact on the poverty-stricken people left behind. More than 700 of them work on the base.
We look at gaining the local community's involvement with the transit center and also doing humanitarian assistance projects to help the local people in Kyrgyzstan.
Do you worry about what it's going to be like when the base closes?
I think not just me. I know it's for our people. It's not easy because we don't know food before here, and now just we know everything.
It's definitely difficult knowing that we're leaving and they're going to be staying here. It's really going to change and affect their lives.
The kids, it was nice talking to them, teaching them how to speak English, playing soccer, tennis with them. It was amazing. So
it's tough to leave because we've made good friends out here, but the mission will continue on. These tankers can touch anybody and get folks anywhere in the world.
It's still unclear where the air operations currently running out of Manas will be transferred. I'm told cargo and transport is likely headed to Romania, but air support cannot be at the same location. So where many of our Fairchild crews will go next is still up in the air.
The airmen I spoke with here at the transit center tell me they often get through deployment and the difficulties by taking just one day at a time, but they know the mission does continue even after the transit center here at Manas shuts down in mid-July. So they tell me that anywhere they are needed is where they will go. At the transit center in Kyrgyzstan, I'm Whitney Ward for KREM 2 News. Almost immediately after the Carlton Complex wildfire swept through here, many homeowners began talking about the mistakes they felt DNR made in not stopping the fire when they could have, when it was still small. So now I'm talking again to DNR Commissioner Peter Goldmark. I asked him what his agency has learned in the last year. I also talked with a state firefighter who tells me he worries many of the mistakes made then could happen again.
The question comes a lot of times that this fire was too big. And they're correct on that part, but that's after the fact. That is after the fact.
The Carlton Complex wildfire raged through central Washington like a storm. Winds pushing the flames over hot, dry land, devouring everything that stood. What started with multiple lightning strikes merged into a monster, and when it was all over, nothing would be the same.
The rugged terrain that those fires started in. So you can't put this out with a dozer. You can't put this out with a fire truck. The only way you can really bring this fire under control is by using air. That air was not available last year.
At the same time the Carlton Complex was gaining momentum, dozens of other fires were burning across the Northwest.
They often work together.
DNR's Commissioner of Public Lands tells me it pulled critical resources away from the firefight.
Everybody was totally swamped.
But homeowners from Twisp to Malott say DNR had plenty of crews who did show up in Okanogan County. Over the last year, I've talked to many of them.
This was a man-caused disaster from the beginning all the way through.
But he sat there all day and did nothing.
Me and my hired man could have stopped that fire and they wouldn't let us.
Come on to those engines, and they just sat there.
Have you had a chance to substantiate any of those claims, and what have you learned about what the homeowner said?
So we've investigated every claim that we could, and we haven't found any credible claim that we could back up through other means.
And for a long time, it was essentially a stalemate, one side versus the other. But now we are hearing a new perspective. I sat down exclusively with one of the firefighters who responded to the Carlton Complex. We're not going to show you his face because he says it could cost him his career.
Do you feel like your job could be in jeopardy because you're talking to us?
Oh, of course, all the time.
Why did you decide to talk to us anyway?
I've always had that core, it's, again, you go back and forth, am I doing this, am I being bad, am I doing this, and it's like, no, you're doing the right thing because I was there and there's things that need to be fixed.
He saw firsthand the chaos that comes in any emergency situation, but he says all of it could have been avoided.
You see a fire, you put it out. And that's the problem. It's like, what are we waiting for?
Commissioner Goldmark has insisted since the beginning the Carlton Complex was too big and no one could have stopped it. But firefighters say they could have, but were told to stand down.
There was folks sitting and waiting. I seen that. So, it's me being one of them. You go back and forth. You want to do something, but you can't because you're getting an order not to.
After the Carlton Complex came through, a lot of firefighters said that they were told specifically by DNR, by you, not to talk to the media. Is that true?
We try and funnel all media through our communications division, who is well informed about all the aspects of what's going out on the landscape and is an appropriate place for media.
Do you worry that a lot of people will see that and wonder if you have something to hide?
I think accuracy is really important. And the accuracy, we're very careful when we talk to the media to know what the actual facts are, whether it be about what started this fire or whether it be about an injury that happened. We want to be accurate all the time. And the only way to really do that is to have thorough investigation and really knowing what the facts are instead of speculating about it.
Because there were claims of people who said, I tried to go put the fire out up there because I knew it was still small, but DNR told me I couldn't do it. Did you find that that's actually what happened?
I found no instance where that was true, to the best of my knowledge.
So do you think these hundreds of people are making that up?
I'm not sure it's hundreds of people. I know there was a tremendous amount of frustration at the loss of their property. And I understand the natural tendency of people to want to place blame.
One of the biggest stories to circulate since the fire is that of a plane full of smoke jumpers.
Off NCSB
to the W-bar-W with 4 smoke jumpers.
While responding to another fire in Idaho, they noticed one of the starts from the Carlton Complex lightning strikes.
Just flying south here, just spotted a couple smokes. Not sure if Leacher had called these in, but they're probably, 3/4 of a mile apart between the two.
But when they asked if they should jump on it, permission was denied.
Yeah, we do have the 4 on board here, but let's see if you guys want to continue on with the previous mission or divert. Copy that. I'll find out and get right back to you. Yep, 9, you can continue on to the W-bar-W, and it sounds like we may have these already as incidents.
And it's delayed action like that, firefighters say, allowed the Carlton Complex to become a firestorm.
You rewind time. Why did they wait? Why did they wait? Why did they wait?
Commissioner Goldmark maintains his agency did everything it could with the resources it had, but he agrees moving forward, more is needed.
What have you specifically learned since Carlton Complex?
I've learned that I need to get as many resources as I can to have a volume of resources necessary to meet the number of incidents.
Earlier this year, he requested $73 million for fire suppression and prevention efforts, including several million just for more equipment.
And I asked for $4.5 million so I could have more crews, more fire trucks, more heli-tac crews, and more training. Now, regrettably, they only funded that at the 30% level.
He says the state's fire forecast is a grim one, with this year already meeting and exceeding those expectations.
We know fire is going to happen, but we need to be prepared for it.
And firefighters say a big part of being prepared for the next fire is learning from the last one.
You stand up and say, hey, yeah, we messed up. We're going to fix it now.
In Okanagan County, Whitney Ward, KREM 2 News.
And they asked us to stay in our seats and not to leave. They start locking all the doors, so you hear these doors shutting. And
were you afraid?
You know, I wasn't afraid in that moment. It didn't feel good to sit there. It felt like people were taking things into their own hands, that there was a lawlessness attached to it, and that's un-American. And it disturbed me a lot.
Do you think the president played a role?
I think that there were a lot of things that happened. I think most of the people who came that day were really intending to be peaceful, to make their, really wanted to highlight some of their questions and their concerns.
We will not take it anymore, and that's what this is all about.
But do you think the president's speech out there to the crowd helped incite that riot?
He didn't say, go storm the Capitol.
He said fight like hell.
There's a he didn't give him the direction to do that.
You released a statement talking about what happened at the Capitol, and especially after the impeachment, the second impeachment of President Trump. So I just want to use your words here. People on the right have excused and defended President Trump, including me. It meant turning a blind eye to arrogant, prideful, and bullying behavior. Do you have regrets?
Well, I think I also talk about people on the left too. I think we all need to take responsibility. In a government that is the greatest experiment in self-governance, it requires individual responsibility. And so I hope in the midst of all of this that we all really look at what we can be doing to restore civility and these values that we've long admired and upheld as Americans.
What does that mean for you? What will you do differently moving forward?
Well, it means, I would say this has been on my mind for a number of years. I've been concerned about the lack of civility. And I share that because this has been building for a number of years.
Does it mean speaking up even members of your own party? Does it mean speaking up if they're doing something that you don't think is civil?
Well, I want to highlight that I have spoken up, and I have at different times, especially during some of the things that President Trump said, I did speak up.
Do you believe there was widespread fraud that impacted the results of the election and the outcome?
I said from the very beginning that my objection was not to overturn the election. My objection was to answer some questions, because I believe that election integrity is foundational.
But hearing from elected lawmakers in the GOP saying the election is being stolen, hearing that, do you believe that played a role, though?
I think in my mind, it was about addressing changes that were made in election procedure. I am concerned that we must take action to protect election integrity. Because if we don't have election integrity, we'll lose it all. We will not have the peaceful transfer of power in the future, and we won't have our Constitution.
How do we move forward from here? How can we possibly come back from this brink that we're at right now?
We come back by each one of us recommitting to being a person who seeks understanding, a person who is putting the other person first. And I think politics is one piece of it. What happens in Washington, D.C. and Congress matters. What happens in Olympia matters. What happens in the city with our mayor and our county matters, and on the school boards matter. But what happens in our families matter. What happens at our businesses matter. The way we treat people, the way we talk to people. My hope is that Spokane will be a place where it starts.
This will be all new.
Ron Eslick has been a livestock producer in Ferry County for decades. His family's been grazing cattle on the same land for almost 80 years.
I should be retired, but I like cows. Yeah. You can go out and talk to them and they don't talk back.
I first talked to him last fall when he gave me an unprecedented look at his small family-run operation and the challenges wolves have brought over the last few years.
And that was all scuffed up there where she's fighting it off.
He personally lost another 3 cows to wolves in 2018. It cost him thousands of dollars off his bottom line. And as this winter will soon turn into another spring, he says he has no choice but to do things differently from now on.
Well, first off, I got to build a fence. Then we get them up here and then we can rotate the pastures and we can keep an eye on them.
Instead of sending them up to graze on his U.S. Forest Service allotment in May, he'll bring his 40 cows here to his son's pasture, completely enclosed and better protected.
Did you ever think that you would have to do this?
No, never thought in my life.
They'll create 3 pastures here for easy rotation, and Ron's son will also be living just a few hundred yards away, ready to respond when, not if, the wolves try to move in.
Is it going to be more expensive for you to do this in the spring?
Probably, yes.
Yeah? Worth it?
Oh, yeah.
What was the tipping point for you to finally decide that it wasn't worth it to just send them up on your allotment anymore?
Well, I'm afraid you go up there on horseback, you're going to be chased around by wolves. Then what's going to happen?
But there are still known wolf packs on every side of these pastures, with new tracks and sightings every single week.
So even moving them here to a pasture isn't 100% fix?
No, it's not 100%. And if they keep getting hungry, then wolves are going to be eating everybody's cows right close to the house. I mean, they're coming in. They're not scared of you.
We've had an extremely difficult year. Right now is a time where we're reflecting on that and saying, okay, how can we change what we're doing so that we don't have this happen again?
Washington's Department of Fish and Wildlife is responsible for managing wolf recovery in the state, but many have criticized the agency for putting everyone else's needs, including the wolves, over the ranchers.
So is the expectation that the cattle ranchers make adjustments to having wolves in that area rather than trying to adjust the wolves' behavior?
All of the above. The expectation is to try to proactively, with non-lethal tools, influence wolf behavior. And so producers at least do two things from the non-lethal tools to try to prevent conflict.
But ranchers like Ron say they've been doing that for years, and the problem's only getting worse. After our story aired last year, he says several of his neighbors and colleagues then also wanted to share their experiences.
They need to do something to manage it.
And what was supposed to be a small meeting at the Kettle River Grange,
They're not going to leave.
became much bigger.
We've lost cattle every year since 2011.
Last night, I had a wolf come in the yard, almost got my dog.
And they're hanging on the mountain directly behind my house, so I'm kind of squeezed on all sides at the moment.
What does that mean for your daily life?
My grandkids don't get to walk outside on their own anymore.
Does it scare you that much?
Yeah, it does. When you can find tracks within 150 yards of your house.
Some of these landowners have been raising livestock for years, others just getting started, but all have the same concerns about wolves.
What do you think the state could do to at least ease some of the struggle?
They've got to get a responsive lethal protocol. They need to move quickly. When we see issues building, this can't be something that lasts an entire grazing season.
They need to get rid of some of them.
Okay.
Because the numbers they're multiplying faster than, it's terrible. How can you just say that's okay? It's not okay.
In 2018, WDFW killed multiple wolves after repeated attacks on cattle, but these livestock producers say it's not enough.
The department is the one that has the ability to do something about it, and they're not doing it.
So what do they need to be doing?
Well, the first thing they could do, they're the ones that have the information of where the wolves are at. They know those wolves are there. They should be telling the ranchers.
I do believe there should be more collars on more of the wolves, which would help. But those collars also need to be set appropriately so the information we're getting isn't 4 days old, because by then it's no good.
And they agree communication with Fish and Wildlife isn't always easy. In fact, many no longer even report dead cattle because they say it's just not worth the trouble.
Pretty much, they want you to cater to the wolves, and you just can't do it.
They need to look at this region separately than the rest of the state.
The other side of the state is content to let the wolf sit here and eat our cows, and it's insulting.
So I took that sentiment back to Fish and Wildlife. Wolf policy lead Donnie Martorello says it's a balancing act that has to include the entire state.
Working with livestock producers, working with hunters and environmentalists and Department of Fish and Wildlife, and trying to put things in action to meet those needs.
You say that's a big order, and certainly it is. I think a lot of ranchers in this area would say you're not meeting their needs. What would you say to them?
I would say let's not give up now. Let's keep at it. We can do this.
But for ranchers all across Ferry County, something's got to give. But for them, there's simply nothing left.
We don't want to destroy all the wolves. We just want to make a living of our own.
It is the crown jewel of the Northwest landscape. Endless forests of larch, juniper, and pine stretched out for as far as the eye can see. Home to countless birds and animals, and a timeless place of recreation and refuge. Many of these trees have been standing for decades, but as each year passes, there is a growing threat. Devastating and unprecedented wildfires not only threatening the trees themselves, but taking direct aim at the entire landscape as we know it.
I'm here in the Colville National Forest. This is an area that has already been determined to be at a high risk for catastrophic wildfires. If you look into the woods, you can see it is incredibly thick, it is very dense. Parts of it are very unhealthy, and again, it is highly susceptible to those catastrophic wildfires. Wildfires like we saw in Montana this year, wildfires like we've seen for the last several years in the Okanagan areas of central Washington. So the question remains, what could be done to prevent that type of wildfire? So I had a conversation with a logger, and I had a conversation with an environmentalist, and it turns out they both agree logging could be the answer.
It's not just a black and white story. It's not just clear cut or pretty forests. It's either we manage it or we're going to have consequences.
To truly understand the landscape of Washington and Idaho forests, you have to take a closer look. You may not see it at first glance, but it doesn't take long to realize the vast majority of U.S. Forest Service land is struggling.
Do you look at this area and think that it is susceptible to wildfire?
Yes.
Why?
So if you look around, all of these, like these pockets here, so this is a western larch tree right here. It's a fire-resistant species. When a fire comes through here, if it's on the forest floor, it will just burn the bark, won't affect the tree. The tree will be fine and it'll live through that. You have other species in here, like this big fir tree here.
This one?
See how the limbs are down to the ground?
I do.
That makes them more susceptible to fire.
Like a ladder.
Yeah.
Russ Vaughan knows a thing or two about trees. His grandfather started Vaughan Brothers Logging back in the early 50s. Russ has held numerous positions in the company, most recently as vice president. He tells me logging has always been about utilizing one of nature's most abundant resources. But now, more than ever, it is also about taking care of it. Over the last decade, western states have seen an exponential increase in timber loss to wildfire. Flames hundreds of feet high have decimated millions of acres of federal forest land and often knocking on the door to our communities, businesses, and homes. What used to be the rare exception is now the norm.
We really need a more cohesive strategy to deal with this so we can protect the communities, but at the same time, we need to protect the natural landscape.
It's something the Vaughan family has quietly been trying to do for at least 15 years.
It really is kind of a common sense thing.
Mike Peterson is the executive director of the Lands Council, a group dedicated to protecting area forests. The two have become unlikely friends.
We had appealed and filed suit on a lot of timber sales because back in the 80s and 90s, the logging was very different.
That is for sure. Back in the 80s and 90s, the timber wars reached their peak. Environmentalists and loggers squared off over the issue of protecting the spotted owl. It's where it all started. Loggers raced to harvest as many trees as they could, while environmental groups filed lawsuit after lawsuit to stop them. It went on for years, and eventually the U.S. Forest Service decided it was easier and far less expensive to just stop the timber harvest on federal land, and it stayed that way for more than 30 years.
That 30 years has really accumulated to what we're seeing in a lot of our fire-prone forests in the Intermountain West.
But Russ and Mike now sit on the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition, an alliance that at one time would have been unthinkable, where former adversaries realized they could get more done if they worked together.
Do you consider yourself an environmentalist?
Absolutely.
Are you of the same thought that logging could be a good thing?
Logging is a great tool for restoration. I see us restoring by leaving the most resilient trees, like the western larch, and taking out the ones that are next to them that are going to burn up in a fire.
We really focus on the interests of what's best for the forest, and by doing that we can find common ground and then reach our collaborative goals out on the landscape.
Goals like reducing the severity of wildfire.
We take out some of these trees that are not fire resistant and we intermix those in the stand so when a fire does come, those trees can survive like they would have historically.
So it's not a clear cutting, which many people might think of when they think of logging.
Right.
What do you say to people who will look at you and say, yeah, of course you're for logging. That's your family business.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. It's beyond my family and the business. You know, we're trying to build a business that adds value to the forest.
The truth is, more is being done right now on Vaughan's North Mill Creek A to Z project. 50,000 acres in the Colville National Forest being actively harvested on U.S. Forest Service land. It's a 10-year project. This is how it looks after crews are finished. More space between trees means more sunlight and fewer invasive species. It also means less competition for water and nutrients in the soil. Healthier trees ready to stand against wildfire.
Minimum of 40 trees on any 1 acre. That's not clear cutting.
Do you think people would be surprised to know that an area that's been logged isn't going to be clear cut? Do you think people still hold that notion?
Yeah, I think people do. Some people still use that rhetoric. We've gotten beyond that, at least on the Colville National Forest.
But 50,000 acres is a tiny fraction of U.S. Forest Service land nationwide. In fact, these are fires burning today, the overwhelming majority in the West on Forest Service land.
What do you say to the environmentalists who are completely against logging, who say that it's bad for the environment, they want to save the wildlife? What do you do? How do you convince them that this is a good thing?
Well, I always invite them to come out and talk on the ground. What's going to change? These other trees will grow up. It'll be even thicker and thicker and thicker.
With fire, there's a pyramid, and it's fuel, it's an ignition source, and it's oxygen. We can control fuel. We've got excess fuel loads.
So as Vaughan crews clear away these excess fuel loads, there is so much more it can only be counted in the millions. 193 million acres of forest, a full 90 million diseased and overcrowded and ready to burn.
I look at these fires, I'm frustrated because we're not doing enough.
Is it a public relations battle?
Yeah, and we had a good public relations moment because all the smoke in the air, but then the hurricanes hit and took the attention away, and nobody's thinking about forest fires now.
Nobody except those who have lived through it.
We've gotten past that.
And these guys, bit by bit, trying to stop it.
Just a tinderbox waiting to go up.
They're in it for the long haul.
When I started here at KREM, I was a reporter and the weekend anchor, but it was also here at KREM that I really became an investigator. Over the years, so many of you reached out to me because you trusted me to tell your story. You needed help to tell an important story, and it was my honor to do that. So as I say goodbye, thank you. Thank you for trusting me and for letting me become part of your day and part of your life. Sitting here at the anchor desk and bringing you the news every evening has been the privilege of my career. I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you for watching.